The Beach FM Business Lunch Show, brought to you by PlaceMakers Kapiti Horowhenua. Together we're building New Zealand.
Welcome back to the Business Lunch Show on Beach FM with Damian on your Tuesday afternoon. It is time to talk to one of New Zealand's leading business journalists with over 30 years experience. He is the Chief Executive of the Business Desk. He is Pattrick Smellie. G'day, Pattrick.
Hi.
How are we doing at this time, my friend?
Well, I suppose it all depends on how quickly we come out of level 3 and go into level 2, because I imagine there are a lot of business owners out there who are starting to get a bit desperate about being able to trade more normally, especially if they haven't been able to trade at all. So I think it's very interesting to see some polling last week where people were asked, is the worst behind us or is the worst in front of us? And they're split right down the middle. And the way I would think about it is that I think from a business owner's perspective, probably March, April, during the level 4 lockdown would have been the worst time, because you just have no income coming in unless you can make your business work from home. But the next few months are going to be pretty tricky. I mean, a lot of people are going to lose jobs. There's no two ways about that. And I think in many ways that we are in for a difficult winter. I hate to say that, and I think there are still some positives out there, not the least of which is that we will get a vaccine and this time will pass. This is not a structural thing that's happened in the economy. It's a virus which has struck the world, and at least in New Zealand we've got it under control as much as anybody could hope to. But it's going to be a difficult winter.
Absolutely. Well, mate, you cut your teeth in regards when you started out your career as a press secretary in regards to crisis management. Are you still involved in heading along to those? Is it still something that you're involved in?
Oh, no, not really. I mean, I worked in the Beehive for a while, way back in the 80s, and I worked for Contact Energy for a few years in the 2000s. I kept getting drawn back into journalism because it was what I was better at. I suppose what strikes me about the current situation is a long crisis, and the thing about crisis is that the things that you've got to get right are you've got to tell people what's going on quickly and as accurately as you possibly can. And some of the people I've been talking to over the last few weeks about how the coronavirus thing plays out, to say the Canterbury earthquakes. I've talked to people like Bill English and others who were involved in the government at the time of the Canterbury quakes, is they say things like, you've got to be able to learn to listen to everybody, including the people who are shouting at you the loudest, because periods like this can be almost like a kind of grief. So some people are bargaining, some people are angry, some people are in denial. Very few people, I think, have yet really quite got to the point of acceptance around the way that our lives have changed and the way that, the next sort of 5 years has been, knocked around. And I thought taking a year off and having a sabbatical, and it was all planned for 2024. I'm not entirely sure that the old family finances is going to let that happen now. It's hardly a cross to bear compared to the kinds of problems that many people are going to have to deal with.
There's been just so much information going on over the last 6-7 weeks in regards to this whole thing. Have the government been getting it right with what they've been bringing out and changing as they go?
Look, I'm not one of those people who's inclined to say they got things wrong, because I don't know that it's possible to get everything right in a situation like this. You just got to put your best foot forward and hope for the best. There's probably one area where I think they should have rethought, and that's particularly around the construction sector. I think that the Australians have shown us that could have kept working. There's a lot of people employed in that sector, things like Transmission Gully, which I guess people up the coast are thinking, well, how long is it going to take for that damn thing to get finished now?
Absolutely.
If it had been able to keep on going, maybe we wouldn't be in a position where it's uncertain as to whether the contract's going to be fulfilled. We just don't know at the moment what the situation is there. But there'll be a lot of that kind of uncertainty created in these big projects. So it's kind of an ironic thing that on the one hand, the government wants to kick a whole lot of job creation into life by doing a bunch of infrastructure projects more quickly than they would otherwise have done. But at the same time, there's a whole lot of infrastructure which was underway or is underway now, which is kind of mucked up by that month off. But what do you do as a government? If we were sitting in a situation like the United States or Italy or any number of European countries, let alone some countries in Asia where governments have let this virus get away on them, nobody would be saying, oh, thank goodness we've get the economy running. They'd all be saying you've made a terrible mess of it. So there's no right answers. Every country is doing things slightly differently. I think we're talking on a Monday where we've had no new cases reported. That's a pretty good sign.
Absolutely. Why do you think the government changed their mind on how they were accessing and delivering the small business loan scheme?
I'm not entirely sure what happened there. It's in timing. I mean, obviously they appear to have put the tax department loan scheme in place almost by accident. I think they were intending to announce that this week, and then they legislated for it without really meaning to. I think, though, what they were reacting to in the end was that they were hearing more and more and more real pain in the small business sector, and that the bank guarantee scheme, the wage subsidies, the various things that are announced around commercial lease deferrals and so forth weren't enough. They realised that unless they could do more to directly financially assist very small businesses, which is basically most of the New Zealand economy, they were going to not only end up with an economic problem, but also a big political problem, because these businesses are the businesses that employ small numbers of people, but you put them all together and they employ very large numbers of people. And I think they could see parts of the small and medium enterprise sector going a bit feral politically, but also starting to really lose it as to whether they would be able to keep going or not. And so they just had to do more to try to shore up people's confidence that they could keep going. I think the big question will be, there are businesses out there which were not doing well before COVID-19.
Yeah.
Some of those people will have had unrealistic visions about what their businesses could become, and they'll be very resentful about the fact that the hammer is falling faster than it might have, and they'll be inclined to blame the government for that. Those businesses probably could never have been saved anyway. It just might be accelerating things. It's the businesses that were doing well and suddenly had the foundations kicked out, who will be most, we can't afford to lose the most, I'll put it that way.
Absolutely. And lastly, question for you, Pattrick. What's the future of our airlines, particularly Air Chatham's and the one that's serviced regionally, and how is it going to affect those businesses in those regions without an airline?
Look, I'm an optimist about this, to be honest, for a couple of reasons. One is that, there's a complicated answer. If the government says to Air New Zealand, you've got to fly to all the regional centres, on the one hand, that will mean that there will be regional flights all over the place, but it'll probably be much harder for Air Chatham's and others to compete. Whereas I think if Air New Zealand's allowed to continue to fly as competitively as it can as a domestic airline, that there will be huge demand for regional travel, quite apart from anything else, because there's a whole bunch of people who haven't lost their jobs, who want to go on holidays and can only go on holiday in New Zealand, Australia. Yeah. I actually think that the outlook is quite good for small regional airlines, but they have to get through this very difficult part first.
Absolutely.
They may need some help too.
Absolutely. Well, mate, I just briefly want to talk about Business Desk. What is it, and where can people find it?
We are a subscription only, sorry about that, business news website, businessdesk.co.nz. And if you're really keen to read, I think, New Zealand's best business, economic, and we sort of write a bit of politics where it has to do with business and the economy, and therefore that's, everything that's happening at the moment is really business and the economy and politics. We're at businessdesk.co.nz, and for your listeners, if you want 20% off the annual subscription fee, just put in the coupon code lockdown20 with a capital L, lockdown20, and you get a 20% discount.
Outstanding, Pattrick. Well, thank you for your insight. Go well, my friend. Look after yourself during level 3, level 2, and I look forward to picking your brains sooner than later as we progress through this thing.
Yeah, look forward to it. Thanks.